I want to welcome everybody to Sunday Morning with Twitchy Woman. And our guests today are from Ping-Pong for Good. We have Maureen, Trent, and Ryan, and they will all be speaking to you about how you can play ping pong or table tennis as it is alternately known. In your home, you can play it with a partner, you can play it virtually. There's all kinds of ways you can play this game apparently. So they started this program in spring 2021 at the Pacific Brain Health Center in Santa Monica, where patients engage in ping pong therapy amidst an outpatient rehabilitation experience.
Yeah.
So let me just introduce our speakers really quickly before I turn it over to them. Maureen McComsey has worked at the cross-section of business, storytelling, and social innovation for over 2 decades. She is the founder, CEO of Momentum for Good, a social impact consultancy that helps organize and mobilize social impact innovation. It offers guidance and expertise to incorporate social good into a business, whether it is systemic or project specific. Prior to Momentum for Good, she served on the founding team as head of operations and client service, leading its ESG and impact investing initiatives. And I have no idea what that is, Maureen, you'll have to tell us. Trent MacLean is a highly sought after apparel and retail industry expert and has served in senior executive roles for leading international apparel brands, including Liz Claiborne, Seven for All Mankind, Page, Rock Revival, as well as executive roles at the Hudson Bay Company, which now owns Saks, right?
They do, and Lord & Taylor.
And Lord & Taylor. Mr. Trent is the founder of Trent MacLean Management Consulting, a firm specializing in servicing entry and middle market wholesale manufacturers and retailers. And I will send you an article with his journey with Parkinson's when I send the video in the next couple of days. Ryan Glatt is a psychometrist and brain health coach at the Brain Health Center in the Pacific Neuroscience Institute. With strong background in exercise, science, and human health, Ryan develops curricula specifically targeted towards those with dementia and Parkinson's disease, autism spectrum disorders, and traumatic brain injury, coaching individuals towards optimal brain health. As well as developing programs for the health and fitness industry on health neuroscience, Ryan actively consults for brain-based technology companies like SmartFit. He has completed brain health programs for the Amen Clinics, the Neuro Coaching Institute, the Neuroscience Academy, the Neuro Leadership Institute, Neuroscience for Coaches, and others on the topics of brain health, sleep, and mindfulness. And I'm going to end it there because it goes on and on and on. And Ryan is doing terrific things. So let me just tell you a little bit about my experience with ping pong, or table tennis as it is otherwise known. We had a ping pong table in our basement when I was growing up. So whenever the weather was bad, we were down there playing ping pong all the time. And then I went away to school and never saw a ping pong table again for years. So looking forward to this. It's going to be fun. So I'm going to turn it over to Maureen, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Sharon. We're just so happy to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to share kind of the incredible benefits that about ping pong, which, as you mentioned, I think so many people are not aware of. I know I certainly was before I first began my own journey in these last a year and a half or so. So yeah, we'll dive into it. And I just want to acknowledge that we know that you all especially know the importance of exercise and maintaining an active lifestyle, but also for managing Parkinson's. So that's one of the things that we really discovered, and being inspired by a friend of mine who is 91 years old and has been playing most of her life. And is to great benefit. And over during the quarantine period, she had that was the only thing that she could do, and she ended up playing 1,246 consecutive hits with her son, in which we think is a world record for a 91-year-old. And it was incredible, but it was an inspiring story, and that's really what kind of kicked off this whole what I like to call ping pong journey, and seeing what it had done for Eileen. And there's a lovely news story of her story on our website, which I'm happy to share with Sharon as well. But she found that her husband also benefited greatly prior to his passing. And through that experience, we did some research and discovered that they've been actively treating Parkinson's with with table tennis, and there's been a lot of anecdotal evidence out there. And Ryan will speak to this in more depth, but just in March, there was an announcement from the American Association of Neurology about a small study which actually showed really promising results for Parkinson's patients in particularly. So that resulted in me reaching out to Trent, and he'll talk a little bit more about how that how we progressed from there. But I just want to give you a little bit, before we do that, some information about what we're going to do today. So we're going to first I'm going to share, really what our objectives are as an organization. Trent's going to share his personal story, and then and give a brief. And then Ryan is going to give a brief presentation about really the science behind why ping pong is so good for you. And then we'll do some demos and show you some examples of what you can do with just even a ping pong paddle and a ball. So before I hand it over to Trent, I just wanted to mention what we're really looking to do is create a protocol of treatment around what is called ping pong therapy, which you'll learn from Ryan, they're actually using exercises and dual tasking and opportunities to use the activities of what you would use in a ping pong game, but as therapy. And then we're also developing what we're calling Ping-Pong Fitness, which is where anybody at any level, with or without Parkinson's or with Alzheimer's, or even kids with ADHD, or if you're just an active 50-year-old wants to stay fit and keep their brain and train their brain. So really people start thinking about, hey, we do our cardio, we do our strength training, but we also train our brains, and we can do that with ping pong and playing regular table tennis. And we really also finally want to support clinical research and get more data around these benefits, because we're seeing every day anecdotal evidence, but we want to see and get the research done too. And then finally, we're going to look at having here in Los Angeles, and we hope it expands, hopefully monthly meetups, so that we can all gather and people can get the resources of places to play where they can meet each other. So then they can go back and go into those some of these centers where people can practice and play, and they have robots that you can use. And what I found is people get intimidated to go to a center on their own. So our hope is to have these meetups where we do the introduction and then you all meet afterwards and can connect on your own. So those are kind of the high level of what we're doing with Ping Pong for Good. And it's just been an incredible journey so far. And I'm going to hand it over to Trent now.
Yeah, I don't think you can see it. You can see the t-shirt. There's a Ping Pong for Good.
Yeah. Trent, 1 second. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat so that we can address your questions as we go along. Thank you.
So I'm about next month, I'll have my 66th birthday, and that'll be my 12th year since diagnosis. I believe that I was showing symptoms as young as 25 years old when I was having a challenge holding on to my squash racket and directing my big toe on my right foot down the ski hill. So I've always had a very active lifestyle, and I attribute my slow progression of the disease to my intense exercise, as part of my lifestyle, cycling, skiing, golf, yoga, weight training, and pretty intense level. And I said, I'm more fortunate than many, with a slow progression, but ping pong was part of my activities as a young boy. And what we found with ping pong is most people do activities because they enjoy them, and they do them because they're able to do them and they're not intimidated by them. And I have fond memories, as a boy with my brother playing for hours in the basement, and started playing again about 5 years ago with one of my fellow members of my president's group. And there's a Instagram shot now on our site showing my play videotape 5 years ago, 2 years ago, and recently. And it's, you know, if you watch it, it actually looks like you might be seeing it in reverse, but I'm getting better. My response time is
He's one of the guests. Neuroscientist who's working with ping pong.
Yes. Sunshine, my goodness.
Okay, can everybody mute themselves, please? Thank you.
So when now when I play virtually sometimes with Ryan, you know, he's my therapist on this. We can be talking to each other, having a therapy session virtually. What we're hoping to see happen, as most of you know, there's kind of what I term now 3 pillars: dance, boxing, and cycling and spinning. And we're not looking to replace any of those, but to have ping pong become that 4th pillar of those 3 that are existing, and make it complementary, make it so that you have one more choice, and it's something that's quite accessible. And as Ryan can articulate much better than I, some of the reasons why it's as good as, or and sometimes better than the other 3 in terms of what it can do for alleviating symptoms. So the thing that attracted to me Ping Pong for Good was really that, as most of you know, probably better than I, a lot of the resources go towards finding a cure. And part of what I think is very important is to be able to have people have a better quality of life until someone does find a cure. And there hasn't been a whole lot of effort in that quality of life area. And I think I've had some personal experiences with 2 people that had kind of frankly given up and weren't going out, weren't active anymore, and they had very active lifestyles. And once I got them back into the activities that they used to do and back into the gym, it was amazing what the difference I saw, you know, in their mood and their attitude. And there were suddenly 2 of them were going out with the girls again for lunch and dinner, which they hadn't done in years. And that was my own just, you know, gut instinct in terms of getting a couple people moving without any kind of scientific backing. So I'm a believer in intense activity. I'm a believer in ping pong, and my own personal development and improvement over the last 5 years hasn't really stopped, you know. And now that I've been informed today about the Olympics, I think I may be even more inspired to go after that. So when Maureen gave me a call on this, I've kind of it actually inspired me to, for the first time, go public with my disease, because I had been, you know, selfish about it, frankly, up till now, and I didn't really want it to affect me professionally in terms of people's perceptions. So when we started Ping Pong for Good, I went public with having the disease and took whatever consequences or whatever implications that would have for me professionally, and happy that I did. And now know that through an activity like ping pong, which is the most participated activity worldwide, recreationally and competitively, that we have more of a chance of accessing more people internationally with this activity alone. So I'm excited about it, and we're thrilled to have, you know, Ryan as part of supporting us on this as well. And we've also got one of the top equipment manufacturers, which we haven't announced officially, but just, you know, quietly to this group, you know, we're getting that kind of support now, where one of the top table tennis manufacturers of equipment and tables will be, you know, our exclusive provider. So we're getting attention on numerous fronts, and it's very encouraging with the momentum that we're getting. I could go on, but I think that's.
No, that was great. And you know, this really is meant to be a movement for brain health and exercise, you know, and really to help make, you know, this ping pong as therapy and as exercise accessible to all. So we're, you know, excited about really having this be a spark to get people connecting, playing, and being active. And I think this is probably a great time to hand it over to Ryan. What do you think?
Sound Maureen. So we're excited to share ping pong and all of its benefits. I think one of the reasons we're so interested in ping pong is because of its ability to be what we would call a disease modifying intervention or therapy. So Trent mentioned the C word, cure. And while it's interesting to hear that word, and it certainly gets people excited, and animal studies are coming farther along for Parkinson's than they ever have, we're still looking at selecting disease modifying therapies in order to improve the symptoms or prevent the progression, typically the speed of the progression of a neurological condition such as Parkinson's disease. So what I'm going to do is share some slides regarding the science behind ping pong and sort of the reason why we might consider it as a disease modifying therapy or intervention. At any point in time, if you feel that I'm going a little too fast or too long, please interrupt me, Sharon or Maureen, because I will keep going. So I think one of the mechanisms in which ping pong can be a disease modifying therapy is this process called neuroplasticity. And you've probably heard about neuroplasticity as much as you've heard the word organic. It's thrown around quite a lot, especially in the context of brain health. And people often misunderstand neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is simply your brain's ability to change, just like your body has the ability to change. So we would call the ability to gain muscle or lose muscle bioplasticity. We don't call it that, but it's somewhat the same thing. And there's different types of neuroplasticity. There's functional neuroplasticity, in which the function or the electricity of your brain is working differently. And then there's the structure, whether it's the dopamine receptors in the basal ganglia to specific neurons or synapses or brain cells, other places in the brain. And so this is very much available to us throughout all of life, but the amount of effort that we require as we age to elicit neuroplasticity is greater. So we used to believe that neuroplasticity wasn't available in older age, but it actually is. But what people don't talk about is the amount of effort required. Just like it might take a little bit more effort to gain muscle as you age, just as it may require a little bit more effort to induce neuroplasticity. So we are looking for physically and cognitively effortful things. That doesn't mean things that are relaxing like meditation or going to an art museum aren't beneficial for the brain. They certainly are. But when we're talking about active interventions, we need a lot of physical and cognitive intensity to elicit change in our brains. And this is why ping pong is such a great way of doing that, because it combines both. So the other thing is, if exercise is a pill for Parkinson's, it's been called a poly pill because it does so many different things. And we know that exercise for the general population, for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's prevention, for brain health in general, and specifically for Parkinson's disease, exercise continues to be one of the most powerful non-pharmacologic interventions in disease-modifying therapies we have available. So it behooves us to understand it better. There's something called cognitive reserve, which is essentially your brain's mental gas tank. And the more full this gas tank is, I'll show you this slide quickly, the longer we can offset neuropathologies like dementia, like Parkinson's disease. So the high cognitive reserve, the one that's at the top there, is the one we're looking for. So how do we boost that? How do we get it to the top and stop it from getting lower? Well, there's various things that go into it. You see cognitive reserve in the middle, and you see these 6 things on the periphery. Let's start in the upper left-hand corner. Modifiable health factors. This includes exercise, blood pressure management, sleep, stress management, etc. Those are all critically important to improve cognitive reserve. Level of education seems to be important, although there's more research coming out showing that maybe how much you're educated may not make too much of a difference on itself. I have plenty of patients that have PhDs, so it doesn't guarantee that you will not get some sort of cognitive or neurological condition. Social support, as we've probably learned to appreciate through quarantine, social support is incredibly important for cognition and mental health. And speaking of mental health, on the upper right, we have positive affect, which is essentially maintaining good mental health, a positive mood state. We also have stimulating activities and novel experiences. This is anything that's stimulating the brain or the body, and that's novel. Since our brain is a learning organ, it helps to encourage novel activities such that our brain needs to rewire and adapt to those activities. and of course, cognitive training. Now, cognitive training doesn't necessarily mean just brain games, although there's various levels of evidence to suggest that these may be helpful in Parkinson's disease for cognitive or motor outcomes like walking abilities. But cognitive training just means anything cognitively stimulating. So if we can actually combine multiple ingredients of these different types of activities that contribute to cognitive reserve, we would make a more potent pill. And so if you take exercise and you make that exercise social, it's such that it puts you in a good mood state, it's stimulating, it's novel, and it's cognitively demanding. On paper, even to non-experts, that sounds like a more potent intervention. And that's the exact type of intervention ping pong is it combines social, it combines exercise, it combines mood, stimulation, novelty, and cognitive demands. So if we're going to be interested in boosting our cognitive reserve as much as possible, we should invest our time and our energy into activities that are going to give us a bigger return on our investment of that time and energy. So in the Parkinson's community, I see a lot of classes that are really good for modifying symptoms related to Parkinson's disease. You've heard of dancing through Parkinson's and boxing. And what I don't like seeing is when the patients that we see at the Pacific Brain Health Center aren't pushing themselves enough. They're kind of just going through the motions of the activity, but Parkinson's responds to intensity, and it also responds to novelty. And so what I really appreciate about an activity like ping pong is you can push yourself a lot more, but it's also fun to do that. We kind of have this thing within the fitness industry where we respond to intensity like, yeah, I know I need to work out at a higher intensity, or I know I'm never doing enough. It's kind of this fun, but kind of negative spin on the psychological interplay of you should always be doing more. But good activities in my books are ones that are cognitively stimulating and social, and you find yourselves exerting more effort without noticing that you're exerting more effort because you're enjoying the process. And ping pong is certainly one of those activities. So let's summarize the effects of exercise on the brain. To simplify this, and it's even here, it's still not simple because neuroscience and exercise physiology is very complex. Exercise can affect the brain at 3 different levels. These 3 levels I call the micro level, the macro level, and the behavioral level. The micro level is what you hear in news articles and scientific journals, and oh, we're releasing blood flow and neurons are growing and synapses are branching and we're releasing growth factors like brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Even the release of dopamine would be at the micro level because these are things that we can't really see. We think we can feel them because at the behavioral level, we feel more energy or we feel sharper, cognition or mood improvements. At the macro level, over periods of weeks and months, this is what we're hoping to affect. It's changes in brain structure and brain function. So that could be an increase in the size of your prefrontal cortex, an area of the brain in the front of the skull there. It could be an increase in the size of the basal ganglia, which is where Parkinson's affects the brain and the central nervous system. And it could even be functional changes in activity. So you're just changing the electricity of your brain and it's becoming more efficient. That can happen a lot sooner than changing brain size. So exercise has been shown over different time courses to affect every level of the brain, the micro, the macro, and the behavioral.
I have a question, Ryan.
Yes.
From Victoria, do people lose their neuroplasticity like muscle mass is lost after stopping exercise?
I think I understand the question. And certainly as we age, it can be normal to lose some muscle mass. And so with age, our brains do change. They, not as significantly as one might think. When we think of brain deterioration, it's kind of a very scary thing, but our brains do change and age just like our bodies do. Certain cognitive abilities like processing speed, short-term memory, those things can change with age. Certain things don't change with age, and some things get better with age, like long-term memory or what we might call wisdom. And so there's certain things that do change with age and certain things that don't. So the ability to induce neuroplasticity is available. It's not lost. You just have to work a little bit harder to get it, just like you would work a little bit harder to get more muscle mass in your 80s or 90s. So it's there, but we just need enough intensity and the right lifestyle to accommodate those changes.
Okay.
Excellent question. So if exercise truly is a pill, what is the dosage of that pill or that medicine that we need? So you might have heard this before, maybe from your neurologist or maybe in the news or from your doctor, that we're looking to hit about 150 to 300 minutes a week of moderate to vigorous intensity aerobic exercise. You will get additional benefits for strength training and additional benefits for what's called neuromotor training. Neuromotor training is any activity that combines brain and body, like ping pong, like tennis, like pickleball, like dance, like boxing. And it just so happens that these skill-based or skillful exercise modalities seem to be specifically helpful in Parkinson's disease. It doesn't mean that not as helpful. It doesn't mean that resistance is not as helpful. All of those are important. So you want aerobic, resistance, and neuromotor or skillful exercise. We want all three of those things. And all three of those things have been found to have benefits to Parkinson's disease and to individuals without Parkinson's disease in very unique and shared ways. But the dosage of minutes, 150 to 300, it's a little weird. We don't think of minutes per week. You could break this down by 5 days a week for 30 minutes a day. So that's 150, or 3 days a week of 45 to 60 minutes. There's so many different permutations and configurations of how you break up your exercise program in frequency, which is how many days per week, duration, how long do you do that exercise for, and type. Is it riding on the exercise bike? Is it boxing, or is it ping pong? And so there's a lot of different configurations, but as long as you're hitting that 150 minutes a week of moderate to vigorous, you're good. Now, most patients I talk to typically say, I'm doing that, I'm walking every day. And my question is, well, don't forget that detail. Do you see that detail? Moderate to vigorous intensity. So moderate to vigorous intensity, if we're looking at a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most intense, we're looking to get to about a 5 or 6 at the minimum on that scale. Most people are at a 3 to a 4 with their walking programs. And so with that, we might just want to increase the demand or speed. Is there a maximum level where benefits level off? That's a great question, Susan. So there is some research to suggest that it takes 52 hours of exercise to get significant cognitive benefits. And if you just stop, you will maintain some of the benefits, but eventually they kind of peter off. And you want to be able to keep going with exercise in order to get most of the benefits. I think above 300 minutes, it would be challenging there's just not enough research to suggest that more than 300 minutes is significantly beneficial, but more research is needed there. Instead of more minutes, I'd probably look at more variety. So instead of going to 600 minutes, instead of 300 minutes, that's like 100 minutes a day. That's probably too much. You want the average of your exercise sessions to be about 20 to 60 minutes in length. I hope that answers your question. Now, research does show that multi-domain exercise programs slow the progression of cognitive decline more than single modality programs. So most people just bias in one type of exercise. Oh, I just walk, I just do Pilates, I do this one thing. But really what we need is more than one type. Just like a diet needs multiple foods to be nutritious. And this was the research I was pointing to, Susan. 52 hours of exercise leads to significant improvements in what's called executive functioning, which is short-term memory, impulse control. You may have heard about executive functioning or even had them assessed by a neuropsychologist if you are a person with Parkinson's. And then processing speed, which you may also know as this cognitive motor slowing of the brain or body. 52 hours of exercise has been shown to improve that as well. Now, 52 hours over what period of time? It could be 3, 6, 9, 12 months, but people are just asking all the time, how long do I need to do this before I see a benefit? You want to hit those 52 hours. Now, that's not been shown for Parkinson's disease. I want to be clear about that, but it's a nice barometer to measure your progress against. Okay, so in summary, exercise can increase energy, improve confidence, improve sleep, improve mood, reduce stress. I don't want to beat around the bush. With Parkinson's, it can be very common to encounter anxiety and depression, specifically depression. And the reasons why, there's different people looking at the mechanisms of inflammation and dopamine, but it's important to be transparent about that and recognize that, yes, this is something that we can struggle with if you do have Parkinson's disease, and therefore it behooves us to pursue exercise even more for its mental health benefits, not just its cognitive benefits or its benefits on the dopamine system. So all of these kind of softer elements are really important, if not most important, because if you're not in a positive mood state, you're unlikely to continue these lifestyle behaviors. Okay, so there's different types of skills. There's closed skills and there's open skills. Closed skills is if you go to the gym and you're on a machine, that machine is stable, it's predictable, movements have a clear beginning and end, and you know what to do and when. These are very good for you. There's nothing to say that closed skills are not good for your brain. In fact, most of the research studies closed skills because they're easier to manage. So I can have an older adult go on an exercise machine and do 3 sets of 15 reps 2 times a week for 60 minutes for 12 weeks. It's very easy to measure and control. Most exercise, especially if you're going to the gym for exercise, are doing closed skills. But this is on a spectrum. If we look on the left-hand side, we have open skills. And open skills is where the environment is constantly changing. Movements have to be continually adapted, and they're externally paced, such as by another player or by another object. And these types of skills do require more cognitive inclusion. You have to use your brain a lot more, and it's rather unpredictable, so you don't know what's going on. These types of open skills seem to enhance cognition more and in unique ways than some closed skills. It doesn't mean we should never do closed skills. That's not what I'm saying. But open skills do seem to have this unique positive benefit on cognition and brain function. And open skills include activities such as ping pong. And this is why it may be so good for individuals with Parkinson's, because we're working on impulse control, cognitive flexibility, a lot of those executive functions that I was talking about, and also processing speed, the speed at which these things are going. Just from a cognitive perspective, from a movement perspective, you have fine motor and gross motor control. You have to predict things. And it's very possible that the cognitive demands of something like ping pong could transfer to improved walking abilities, improved cognitive abilities, and actually transfer to real life, which if we're going to do something, we want it to improve our everyday life. That's what we're after. And so these open skills, it's not just ping pong. It happens to be those other skillful or neuromotor activities that we've already talked about that you're familiar with. Boxing, dancing, and this is why people keep saying that it can be helpful for Parkinson's disease, as long as they have enough intensity. You want to make sure they're challenging enough for you, not so much that you're frustrated, but not so little that you're bored. And typically, as you do something, you will get better. And so you do need to progress that over time.
You know, Ryan, it might be a great time for Trent to speak of his friend who had recently underwent DBS surgery and introducing virtual reality ping pong with her ability to, you know, how she was before and after.
Sure. Do you want me to stop the presentation?
I don't know, or we can just make a note to do that after the presentation, but I just want to make sure we share that story.
I'll let Ryan
You keep rolling and we'll fill it in afterwards.
Great. And how much more time do I have, just so I know?
Oh, about 10 seconds now. How much longer do you need, Ryan?
Oh, I can wrap up anytime you need me to. So.
All right, why don't we wrap up and then we can start doing
Sure.
some demo. We can play.
How about a couple more minutes? Does that sound good? Great. So with this slide, you can see that there's key differences between traditional types of exercise, such as aerobic training or skill training, and motor training. I've used a lot of different words, but motor, neuromotor, and skill-based. A lot of these different names mean the same thing, but you can see that ping pong is something that incorporates aerobics, but it also incorporates skill. And so skill-based training, Dr. Giselle Petzinger out of USC has been researching the effects of skill-based exercise on Parkinson's disease. I was part of her lab for a couple years there and found that skillful exercise seems to modify the dopamine receptors more than other types of exercise. And more research is also coming out showing that the basal ganglia, which is the key area of the brain affected by Parkinson's, responds to motor training more than it does aerobic training. And so it doesn't mean, once again, that we need to eliminate aerobic or strength, but we do need to consider adding some sort of skill-based exercise to our exercise programs. So this is a study on ping pong and cognition. It was a 2014 study. It was not in Parkinson's. It was in frail older women. And it showed that exercise duration and frequency did not influence cognitive function, but results indicated that table tennis exerted a greater influence on cognitive function than other types of exercise did. So it was a smaller study in a smaller, more niche population, probably in a senior living community. But this is good, short or small amounts of evidence that can encourage what I've been saying, is that these skillful activities might give us a little bit more of a potent response to the brain and body. So I think we're about done, unless you want to see some fun brain images. What do you think, Maureen?
I think we want to start maybe getting into the demo a little bit more, and maybe starting to talk about some of the work that's happening at the center, and just get into the real life examples.
I hope by this point everybody is sold. I'll keep going. I'm like the knife salesman at Costco that will just buy the knife set that is ping pong.
Thank you, Ryan. That was awesome.
All right, so we can get into a demonstration. So when it comes to ping pong, you probably have this idea in your head of how it's played. And the most common stereotype or visualization of that is a table, a full table with one person at one side and one person on the other side. And this is how you play ping pong. And that is true. That is how you play the sport of ping pong. But if we're looking at getting the cognitive motor demands, sort of the demands of the ball moving, we're getting the motion of the paddle moving as well. We're working on our balance. There's various ways to configure this. So many people don't play ping pong as often as they think they like because they're on their own. And so there's a lot of ways to include ping pong on your own into your exercise program. If we're going to talk about some equipment, the most basic equipment you might need is a paddle and a ball. So Sharon, I think you have one here, has a paddle and ball. So I have good news for you, Sharon. You can still get the benefits of ping pong without a table. So we're going to talk about how to do that. Before we do, there's other ways of interacting with ping pong. So Trent was talking about virtual reality ping pong. Virtual reality is becoming more and more mainstream. It may not be appropriate for everybody. So just because I mentioned that it could be beneficial doesn't mean you need to go out of your way to make it work for you. But for people who are willing to accept the technology and have some assistance in setting it up, and you can make sure that you don't trip or fall while you're playing virtual reality ping pong, it can be a very nice way to play on your own or play with other people online. But essentially you have a headset on your head, you have a little controller, and you're in your living room with a clear space with nothing in the physical environment, but you have this virtual reality that you're in playing ping pong, and you can play.
Ryan, actually, we have an example. Trent can hold it up to the camera.
Yeah, go ahead, Trent.
Yeah, there it is. You can bring it back a little bit. There we go.
So it's virtual reality has come quite far. That it used to require an external computer. Now it's quite lightweight. The computer is inside the headset. It is owned by Facebook, so that's a double-edged sword. But it is good for accelerating the adoption and the improvement of that technology. And so there is a ping pong game in there called 11 Ping Pong. And as soon as Trent brought his table to the Pacific Brain Health Center, I converted him to virtual reality as a substitute, which is to travel with, right, Trent? Why don't you talk a little bit about virtual reality ping pong and your experience with that?
Yeah, well, the beauty of it, first, to Ryan's first point, is if you're really tight on space, they actually have a stationary one where literally if you had 2 feet around you in a circle, you'd be able to play ping pong safely. You can actually do it if you have a balance problem or your tremors are too great. You can actually do it seated as well. And so the space thing is really great from that point of view. And if you The other thing is when you're playing someone else, if I'm playing Ryan, we're able to actually speak to each other. And I had the opportunity to play in the Parkinson's World Championships in ping pong, and I was able to play against players in 12 different countries. And so I met, without leaving home, I met people in 12 different countries through that. And the beauty of it is you can actually measure yourself on some of the games they have there in terms of your own improvement on skills. So you can, again, work on skills only, you can work competitively. And if you want, there's 40,000 people playing 11 out there that you can compete with if you happen to have any sort of competitive nature, or you can just limit it to your friends. But I just love
ping pong.
I love the fact that I get up in the morning and I do my boxing and my ping pong on it, and you can. I've had my workout
What has he got there, Bob?
in 15 minutes. I can get both of those in if
Sharon's
Oh, Sharon's thing. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
she said it was about ping pong.
Oh, somebody is Ellen. I think you need to mute yourself.
And then the other benefit was, which I think I mentioned earlier, is if I can have Ryan on the other end as my therapist, and I can have therapy without having, if I'm not able to make it in to see him, or right now if I'm out of the country on business, we can still continue to have our sessions, have some fun. He's still trying to beat me, but I
typically do not beat Trent.
I really think quietly though, he's still letting me win. I'm not sure.
No,
but,
you are actually beating me all of the time. Worry not.
So I'm having fun while I'm having therapy, and I don't even realize it, that he's actually working on me physically and mentally while I do it. So, but it is fun. We look forward to it, and we have a laugh doing it. So it's
Yeah, can you
great.
speak a little bit what type of things you would do with Trent, like some of the exercises, like the cognitive tasks that you require?
Absolutely. So what we've been doing at the Pacific Brain Health Center is that for individuals who can play, they understand the basics of ping pong, they can keep a ball going. And I just want to say that learning ping pong itself is the cognitive training. So at the point in which someone can keep a ball going back and forth, we may add brain games on top of the ping pong. So if I'm playing with Trent in virtual reality, I might say, Trent, I've already assessed your balance. I know what positions are challenging for you. Why don't you play ping pong with your feet together? And he'll put his feet together and he'll have to really reach for a ball while not moving his feet, and then come back and stabilize his posture. And that could be challenging. Now for Trent, I know Trent, I've assessed him, I've worked with him. And so I know what's too much and what's too little. I wouldn't do that for everybody. Just sometimes playing the game of ping pong is the balance challenge and the cognitive challenge. I might add cognitive demand by saying, hey, Trent, I want you to name as many words that start with the letter P, and it can't be a proper noun. Go. And he's doing that while he's playing ping pong. And I hear a silent moment. I said, Trent, are you still there? Is the connection still there? I was like, yeah, I'm just focusing on switching between the ping pong and coming up with words. He's dual tasking. And so we'll work on that sometimes as well. In person, I'll take colored dots with letters or numbers and put them on the other side of the table and have people try to hit certain targets. And so this idea of ping pong therapy is taking physical tasks like balancing or cognitive tasks like these brain games that I know you need specifically, and layering them into ping pong. And so we're trying to create a future in which when you go to physical therapy, for instance, this is something that they offer. Going back to how do you access this? Well, what if I don't have a table? Well, there are very low cost ways to do this. If you have a table, period, not a ping pong table, you can actually take these retractable nets and clip them onto one side of the table. You kind of pull them apart like that, and all of a sudden you have a net. I think this is a funny picture of someone doing it on a surfboard. I actually have never seen that. I think that's very funny. And so you can actually just have a $15 retractable net. You have a ball and a couple paddles, and you're off to the races. There's also robots that you can get. And when I say robots, there's a lot of different ones, but this is one where it's sort of like a little cone at the top. You load balls into the top. You have a wired or wireless remote, and it will just shoot balls at you. And you can change the spin, you can change the speed, You have a little catch net at the end of the table. And this is exactly the setup we have at the Pacific Brain Health Center. It's not too fancy, it's extremely affordable, and it's a great way to play on your own while still getting that cognitive and physical challenge in. You can adapt it to yourself, and you can prepare for that next match you have with your friend that you might be playing with. So this is a nice, also low cost way of getting this set up. Certainly, you don't have to have a ping pong table. I think a very low cost way of doing this would be getting a robot, which are about anywhere from $40 to $80. And then you could also have a retractable net set up, for instance, for $15. So theoretically, for under $100, you could have this setup. So Maureen, anything else on that before we talk about exercises with a paddle and a ball?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, Ryan, the other beauty of virtual with the robot is you don't have to pick up the balls.
Yeah, that is true. The benefit of this net you can set up on the back side of the table is it will catch about 60 to 80% of them. But there is a little bit of a game of pickup, which if you are doing that, please watch where you're bending over, watch your balance, and don't hit your head on the way up. I have done that once or twice. So
There's also these great nets that do the little pickup. You can like that pick up the balls while you're standing up, and those work.
absolutely, yeah. These tubes where you just you're standing up and you jam it on top of the ball on the ground and it picks it up. There's these nets that you can use to scoop. There's boxes of balls that you can have next to you. So a little stand-up box or a net. And I have people that don't have the robot, they don't have a official table, and they just bounce the ball and hit it, bounce the ball and hit it. And they have a whole bucket of balls that they're just feeding to themselves and doing that, and that still elicits benefits. So that's great if we have this equipment, but we may not have this equipment. So if we have a paddle and a ball, there's various ways of doing this. So Trent, do you have your paddle and ball as well?
I do happen to have one here.
Demonstrate some of this. Okay. And I want to make sure that everyone can see Trent. Sharon, is there a way for you as the host to pin Trent? I think we're in speaker mode. So I have Trent pinned, and I can see Trent bouncing a ball with his paddle here. So Trent, what we're going to do is start with the ball. You have a paddle. And where do you hold the paddle, Trent? Can you show them where and how you hold the paddle? Okay. So he's holding it like that. And then show them if you're going to do a ball balancing exercise. So you hold it about waist height or belly button height, right?
Yes.
Okay. And Trent, speaking from experience, if you have tremor, what are some strategies if you have tremor?
You can do it. You can put the little cage above it just to kind of steady the paddle, and then you're not going to be knowing you're losing the ball that day if that happens to be a day where you've got a little bit more tremor happening.
Yeah. So what Trent's doing is something called ball balancing. And ball balancing is when you take the paddle and you're just keeping the ball on the paddle. So Trent, if you remove your hand and lower the paddle to about belly button height, you can show everyone there. He's just balancing the ball on the paddle. What he was doing is putting his hand over it like a cage so that he was trying to keep it central without touching his fingers. This is a nice way to train ball balancing without the frustration of it constantly falling off as you try to get better at it. You can also do it sitting down with the paddle hanging over a table so that if it falls off, you can just grab it off the table. It's also helpful to keep a few balls next to you or in your pocket so you don't have to pick it up every time it falls down. And so Trent just demonstrated that there. Thank you, Maureen, for being a feeder. And so this is just ball balancing. So the hand as a cage is a nice way to regress that. And you can also just say, all right, how many seconds can I balance the ball before it drops? I might say, let me try 1 second, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And you keep doubling the seconds every time you're doing it successfully. So Sharon's also doing this here. Very good, Sharon. And so you just see how long you can do it. You try to get your upper limit, and then you know how long you can do that for. Now, there's other things that you can do. Let's assume that you can do ball balancing very well after a few days of doing this or weeks of doing this, and you want to make it a little bit more challenging. Now what we can do is start to modify what you do with your body, okay? So Trent is just standing feet hip width apart. It's a normal self-selected stable stance. Trent, what would happen if you put your feet together? So I know we can't see Trent's feet, but we went from hip width apart to standing with his feet together. And now we've reduced the stability here. So his stability is not as spread out with his feet. His feet are now together and he has to control his posture a little bit more. This is a little bit easier for Trent, who's a little bit more experienced, but even with Trent, you might be able to see a little bit of postural control or sway with his upper body leaning left or right, trying to stay over his center of mass. Another way we could do this is by modifying your feet yet again. And now I wouldn't advise this. I wouldn't advise this for people who haven't done this movement yet. For any movement we do with a ball and a paddle, you have to be able to do on its own without a ball or a paddle. And so you might slide your foot forward and do what's called a semi-tandem stance, where one heel is inside the opposite foot's toe. So you've actually created almost a split stance. This is before doing full tandem stance, where your heel is in front of your toe. And you always want to do this with a chair or a wall nearby that you can grab onto if you don't feel comfortable. And you might feel comfortable when you start. You might get so involved in what's going on with the ball and the paddle that you get a lot more unstable than you expected. And so that's why it's helpful to maybe stand with a couch behind you in case you need to sit down, or a chair, or grab a chair to your left or right, or have your hand against a wall as you're doing this. That's always encouraged so that you can maintain as much safety as possible.
And right now, Ryan, as you increase those demands, it's requiring more focus, and I got a little bit of tremor in my right leg.
Thank you for that, Trent. So some motor or cognitive symptoms will appear as you start to increase the demands of the physical, or the balance in this case, and the cognitive, which is the ball balancing. Trent, I'm amazed you're still going. This is great. Why don't you give yourself a break, Trent? Let's talk about some other things we can do. So ball balancing is a great way. Great job, Sharon, as well. I'm seeing that. Do paddles come in different sizes or handle sizes? That's a great question. I know that there's some variability in in the paddle grip. Maureen, are you aware of larger or smaller paddles?
I'm not. Yeah, I'm sure there has to be. Yes. I actually will provide links to the whole set of paddles that ULA provides.
One thing
That's a great question. That's a great question, though.
Yeah, Ryan, one thing there is available, there is actually, I think they actually might even call it a senior's ball, but there's actually a larger ball available, and it's designed to not only be easier to sight, but it has a different, it sort of takes the pace off the ball a bit.
Yeah. In addition, I know some individuals do struggle with more significant tremors. And so there's something that occupational therapists might do, where if you take a pen and the pen is shaking, you actually have this foam where you slide the pen in the middle of a foam, kind of like the donut, and it expands the grip into your hand. So it's easier to stabilize. So you could, so it's kind of like a miniature pool noodle, and you're putting forks or pens into these foam grips that make it easier to hold and help stabilize the tremor. You could do that theoretically with a ping pong paddle or a dumbbell or anything that has a grip or a handle. I have also had people do the same things we're doing, ball balancing and ball bouncing, which we're about to show for a few seconds here, with with a real tennis racket. It's a much bigger surface and a tennis ball. And that's a nice way to increase the surface. No, it's not ping pong, but we're accessing some of the same mechanisms here. And as long as you're able to accomplish it, that's what we care about. And maybe you graduate to a ping pong paddle, which is a smaller target, and a ping pong ball, which is also a smaller target. And could we quickly show ball bouncing, just for us to understand how we might vary these exercises? So ball bouncing is exactly what it sounds like. If we think of the good old paddle ball with a string on the ball, and we're hitting it back and forth, we're just doing that without the string. And so Trent is doing this very well. He's bouncing the ball up and down. But Trent, let's talk about how to start with this. let's grab the ball in your non-paddle hand, throw the ball up in the air, bounce it off the paddle, and then catch it just once. That's all we're looking for, just once. Good job, Sharon. I see you're doing that as well. And if we can do that, let's do it twice. 2 bounces and then a catch. And then 3 bounces and then a catch. So you're building up your bounce tolerance. That's what we're trying to do here. So as you start to build up your bounce tolerance, as you get to 5 or 10 bounces in a row, not only do you have to use your brain to keep track of how many bounces you have, you're counting, you're allocating your attention, but you're also focusing with your hand-eye coordination. And we haven't even started to incorporate any of those same balance exercises that we talked about earlier. We could also start bouncing up and down while moving our body. So Trent, why don't you try bouncing up and down as you march in place, or step side to side, or step back and forth. Of course, you want to be very cautious as you introduce some of these exercises, knowing that it will demand your dynamic balance, and you don't want to trip over anything or stumble or tremor with the lower extremities. And so it's, once again, always good to have a chair or a wall near you as you're doing this. And also knowing that if the ball gets away from you, you're going to have this desire to lunge after it, which could contribute to a potential fall. So please do resist that. If you feel like the ball is getting away from you, let it go. Just get another ball and try it again. So it requires some restraint. Trent, anything else you want to say or do in regards to the ball bouncing?
No, I just say that, the beauty of doing these exercises is that when you actually play the game, one of the biggest things that people don't do when they play is watch the ball right to the racket. So that whole idea in terms of focus it's a great drill just for that reason alone. It just helps you once you start to play with that focus, seeing the ball off the racket.
Yeah, and Ryan, so people sometimes start with just balancing the ball and doing lunges and walking side by side and doing those turns. Maybe you can show doing some of doing that can be challenging.
Yeah. So we like to start with ball balancing, and once you can do ball balancing, add in some static balance tasks like your feet together. And once you think you've got some of those static balance tasks, then we can do more dynamic balance tasks like stepping side to side, like marching in place. And then we can progress to ball bouncing with those tasks as well. Once again, please speak with your doctor or physical therapist before incorporating any of these exercises, because I don't know all of your capabilities here. And so I wouldn't want to recommend something that's not appropriate for you. But hopefully this has been a good demonstration to understand how we might incorporate ping pong without some of the equipment that we might have when we think about ping pong. I saw a lot of great questions about table sizes and paddle sizes and accessories, and Maureen can speak more to that with the resources we'll be sending out after this call.
Absolutely. We're happy to connect you with our team, with the manufacturer who is advising us and has really picked out some packages at different price levels that make sense for the people who might benefit from our communities. So feel free to reach out to me personally if you have any questions or want some help picking out anything.
Susan did have another question. How long should a session be and how many days per week after your 300 minutes of aerobic exercise? So Susan, I'm hoping that if you do participate in ping pong, it's not always that it does get your heart rate up, but typically it can, especially as you get to a slightly higher level of proficiency and you're able to keep going, meaning that you're not hitting every other ball. You can hit a bunch of balls in a row with a robot or against a person. It can be very aerobic. And so I'm hoping that it counts towards your minutes of aerobic exercise and is not instead of you actually hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. Sessions could be anywhere from 5 minutes to 60 minutes or more. If you're playing against someone, you could easily go for an hour or 30 to 60 minutes on average, I would say. If you're playing against a robot or in virtual reality, I'd say that would be the same. If you're just doing some of the drills that we just showed you, you could do them for a couple minutes or 5 minutes just to, throughout the day to kind of turn your brain on a little bit. You could incorporate them as a 5 to 15 minute block of an exercise program. Do some of these exercises for 10 to 15 minutes, get on an exercise bike for 15, 30 minutes, then do some resistance training. We call that a multi-component exercise program. So once again, there's so many configurations and possibilities. There's no one right answer. My general recommendation is that for neuromotor activities like ping pong is to try to do them 2 to 3 days a week and anywhere from 20 to 60 minutes. That's my general.
Okay, don't worry about it. Just, it's okay. Okay, Ryan, I'm going to have you stop sharing.
Sure.
Okay, that was part of the problem. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, so let's see, go to view. All right, don't worry about it. Okay, so I want to thank all of our wonderful speakers, Maureen, Trent, and Ryan. Thank you. We have virtual crowns and tiaras for you.
Which one do I get?
Whichever one you want. I'm assuming a crown, and they're
No judgment.
wonderful. Okay, so I will send out the email with the recording probably tomorrow, and I will have some information about different kinds of equipment. This is the set that Maureen dropped off for me yesterday with this is the net and 2 paddles and 3 balls, and you can purchase them through Amazon. Your purchases will benefit Twitchy Women and Ping Pong for Good. There are other things available, such as the virtual reality headset and the robot, and I don't know, all kinds of goodies. And next month, we're going to have a session on clinical trials, should you participate. And so far, Lauren Simmons and Susan Lehman are going to share their experiences and give you some advice on what to look for if you're interested in doing clinical trials. We may have some other speakers as well. And we're only going to be meeting one session a month, one time monthly from now on. We'll see how it goes. But in the meantime, in between sessions, we're going to have some open chat sessions led by one of our Twitchy women, not me. There will be a different topic each time, depending on who is leading the chat. And you can just get on and meet other Twitchy women from around the world for an hour and have a good time. So we're going to have some open programming. And this t-shirt sale is over. Thank you for everybody who purchased them. And you can see Amy Lindbergh wearing her wonderful tank top. I do have some shirts available. If you are interested, just contact me directly and I will let you know what size. The regular t-shirts I have a number of, and I think I have 1 or 2 tanks and 1 or 2 sweatshirts. So if you're interested, just get in touch with me.